Good evening. There are many images of military units returning home to the United States after a long deployment. They're famous pictures of children running towards their parent, breaking the formal military decorum of the unit's dismissal. And at that point, usually pandemonium erupts, everyone starts smiling and cheering, and whether the commander intended to or not, the dismissal is over. Along these lines, when a U.S. Navy ship returns home from a trip at sea, you will often find baby carriages with posters that have the following written on them: "I've waited my whole life to meet you." And this is because the parent in question, usually the father, was out at sea when his son or daughter was born. And these family reunions are understandably very emotional and are very meaningful and beautiful. In our Parshas Vayigash, we have our own intense, emotional family reunion. For the first time in many years, Yaakov meets his son Yosef, who he thought had died many years before. Not only that, but he's become aware that Yosef is running the country of Egypt as the second in command. Yosef is also extremely excited about meeting his father, who he hadn't seen in many years. He is so excited, Rashi tells us, he saddles his own riding equipment. He gets his chariot ready all by himself, which is something that a man of his stature would not normally do. When he finally sees his father, the pasuk tells us that Yosef is very emotional, and he's crying on his father's neck. But what is Yaakov's response? Rashi tells us that at this time of intense emotion, Yaakov is saying Shema. But how is this an appropriate response for Yaakov at this time? Even if Yaakov's arrival occurred during the time period that Shema should be recited each and every day, wouldn't God have understood that Yaakov needs a moment to see his son? Why is Yaakov praying when he is meeting his son for the first time in many, many years? The answer is that Shema is not just a normal prayer. It represents the concept of loving God, Avas Hashem. By saying Shema at this emotional, at this powerful moment, Yaakov was expressing his thanks to God for getting Yosef back and for everything that had happened during all of those years. Yaakov was not saying that he understood what God's divine logic was. He's not saying that he understood why he had to be apart from his son for all of those years. But he was saying that he appreciated that God did what he did for a reason. We can see from here that Yaakov puts his relationship with God prime and first and foremost in his life. He was always focused on his connection to God. No matter what was going on in his life, Yaakov was trying to think of how it would connect him to God, how he would relate it to his connection to God. We may not be on that level of Yaakov Avinu in such an emotional time. However, we can at least imagine how meaningful a God-focused life can be. Because right after Yaakov said Shema, you can be darn sure that Yosef got the biggest bear hug and the wettest kiss he had ever had in his short lifetime. Yaakov wasn't sacrificing being close to his kid. He was simply postponing the emotion for just a short amount of time to express his love for God and to say, God, thank you. Yaakov was asking himself, how can I show God that my connection to him is the most important thing in my life? When we go throughout life, let us ask ourselves the fundamental question: how is the following going to affect my connection to God? Is it going to make me closer to God, or is it going to be pushing me away from God? Is this something that God might want me to do? Is this something that God might want me to stay away from? If we ask ourselves these questions throughout the course of our day, with God's help, we too can lead a God-focused life. Have a great week.